Hello and welcome to this afternoon stimulus package update. On today's episode, we have information on the EIDL and Paycheck Protection programs, where we're at with funding there. We have some info on how exactly to spot a fake stimulus check, which I think is really important and also really interesting. And you guys all requested some information about me, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my business in the middle of the video as well. Feel free to skip around if there's certain things that interest you more or less, or whatever interests you the most. So today we actually have some good news with the EIDL and Paycheck Protection programs. With EIDL funding, really good news. We're at 9.5% of businesses have received funding who have applied for the EIDL grant program. It's still only 9.5%, but this is an increase from yesterday and the day before that, where we were stuck at 7.4% of businesses who had received funding. I keep hearing of more and more people who receive funding, so that's really exciting. And this is before even the additional funding has been approved of yet. So I think we're just going to see more and more people who receive funding as they process those applications. The median EIDL advance amount is $5,000, which means the median company size is 5 employees. That might seem high because many of you just received $1,000, but remember there's a lot of companies with much more than 10 employees. So a company who applies that has 100 employees brings that average up quite a bit higher, because you can't have less than 0 employees, but you can have way more than 10. So that's why the average is around 5. I still have yet to hear anything regarding proof that's going to be required after you receive your EIDL advance on what it's spent on. We know you can spend it on things like payroll, rent and mortgage expenses, interest expenses that were accrued before, I think, February 15th, increased expenses due to supply chain issues, due to COVID. However, I've still yet to hear anything regarding how you're going to prove what this is going to be spent on. It personally makes me a little bit nervous based on the amount of money that I received. I have yet to spend it yet, but I hate to put it like a gray cloud over this, but I'm always just kind of like vigilant about these kind of things. So if you guys hear anything about that, please send it my way. As soon as I find anything, I'll report it to all of you. More and more accounts of people who are actually receiving the loan amount above the EIDL grant keep popping up, which is definitely good news. However, I was told expect to wait at least 2 weeks after you receive your advance amount to get any contact from the SBA to get like your login and your loan documents and stuff like that. After you get your login, you sign some preliminary loan documents, and then they'll send you some actual loan documents via email a few days later. And then you'll finally receive funding a few days after that. So even after you get communication, it's probably about a week before you actually get funding if you want to agree to the loan terms and you want to go ahead with the loan. It seems like these EIDL loans are really good for people who already have SBA loans, because it's basically an SBA loan but with better terms than what you would have got before. So it seems like for those people it's perfect in that situation. I personally have not received any communication from the SBA, and I received my EIDL grant advance now 8 days ago. So I'll keep you guys updated on that as well. So this is, I suppose, a good time to introduce my business for those of you who wanted to know a little bit more about me. I keep getting questions about what exactly I do. First off, I just have a passion for business and economics, and I really like explaining things, taking complicated things and breaking them down and making them more easy to understand. I've been a business owner basically my whole life. Ever since I was like 13, I had a landscaping business. And then when I was 19, I purchased a residential and commercial moving company in Phoenix. And then I grew that to just under 100 employees by the time I was 21 in 4 locations across the country. I eventually sold off my 3 out-of-state locations and just wanted to focus on storage and moving here in Arizona, as well as a couple other smaller projects that I was working on here. I didn't like flying around the country all the time and managing people, 1,000, 1,500 miles away. I just wanted to focus, more on my core here, get a big warehouse, focus on storage, and just do it that way. So sold those off. Now I'm focusing here in Arizona, and that's pretty much all there is about me. I just really like business. I like explaining things. So if you live in the Phoenix area or you're moving to the Phoenix area, give me a call. We can definitely set you up for a move. We do commercial, residential, long distance. Yeah, I'll put the information up on the screen. So yeah, that's pretty much about me and my business. So on to paycheck protection news. We have some more good news today. As of today, we're at 8.6% of businesses funded, according to covidloantracker.com. This is up from 7.8% of businesses just yesterday. I'm surprised that that percentage of funding is almost as high as the EIDL funding. I would assume EIDL would be a lot higher because I've received so many more reports of people who have received money from EIDL, but you know, that works for me. If you're waiting on additional paycheck protection funding and EIDL funding, as of the recording of this video, the Senate and the House have both agreed on that additional $310 billion package for small business funding. However, President Trump has not yet signed off on it. He's expected to later this afternoon, and I'm sure I'll talk about that once he does sign off on it. The package includes $310 billion in funding for small businesses, and $60 billion of that is for the EIDL grant program. So a lot more of you will receive funding once that goes through. I'm a strong believer of. A few more pieces of news on the stimulus check, and then we'll get into how to spot a fake check. California actually passed legislation stating that creditors cannot garnish stimulus checks for debts. I believe this is a really good step in the right direction, and we're probably going to see other states doing something similar. The more I look into it, I've actually been pleasantly surprised that a lot of banks have said, hey, we're not going to do this. There are some that have charged people and then they complain and they're like, oops, didn't mean to do that. Kind of the classic, like, let's see if we can get away with it kind of thing, it feels like. However, I do think people should eventually pay their debts that are due, but this is not the time. This is the time for survival, not for overdraft fees. So it only makes sense to me, like this stimulus payment is not to pay the $200 in overdraft fees because you lost your job. That's just ridiculous. Lastly, it's not too late to input your direct deposit information into the Get My Payment tool on the IRS site. It's kind of up in the air on actually if you'll actually get a direct deposit, but I would, if you haven't done it yet, I would, because it increases your odds of getting it quicker. It's the best, direct deposit is the best case in most scenarios. However, you still might actually get mailed a check even if you put in your direct deposit information, depending on if you're, subject to one of those glitches or, what exactly. And remember, if you have not had your taxes processed yet, which I guess you wouldn't necessarily know, but if you recently submitted your taxes, they may not be processed yet, and that may be why you have not received your direct deposit payment yet, even though they have your bank account information. Also, another reason could be the people who use services like H&R Block or TurboTax, and they set up a temporary account in the past for your tax returns. That could be another reason that you have not received that direct deposit, because it went to the temporary account, which you shouldn't have, and then you may get mailed a check in that situation. So moving on to security features. As you know, I've been really vigilant in making sure that everyone that watches these videos is not subject to a scam and pointing out all the potential scams and what you can do to spot them. So I wanted to point out all the security features on the actual stimulus check now that they're being mailed out, because I think this is really important. The first step is looking out for warning signs. Warning signs would be something like the amount is higher than you expected. There's vague information on the check, like it's not actually your name on the check, or there's no name on the check. Just think how a scammer would think. They might just send blanket checks without a name, or it just says resident or citizen or something like that. It sounds ridiculous, but you send out enough of them, some people will, fall for it. Look out for odd amounts like $1,200.34. Look out for amounts that are more than what you expected. It could be an overpayment scam. Look out for checks that come along with a request to do something, or non-checks that say, hey, log in to get your payment here. If you're suspicious at all, move on to the next step, which is identifying the actual security features on the stimulus check. So I'll put these up on the screen as I go. The Secret Service put this out, all the things to look out for on your stimulus check. So starting with the Treasury seal, the new seal says the Bureau of Fiscal Service. This has replaced the old seal that says Financial Management Service, so you can actually expect to see either one of those. The old one they're going to keep using until they basically run out of paper stock that says that. But one thing to look out here is look for bleeding ink on the seal next to the Statue of Liberty. If you get that wet, it's a black seal. If you get that wet and smudge it, it will actually smudge red. So that's the first security feature. Look out for micro printing. Micro printing is words that are so small that you can't even see that they're words with the naked eye. When magnified, you have to get a magnifying glass for this, you'll see that there's actually words. There's going to be a line on the check, and on this line, it'll say USA, USA, USA. This is on some of the dollar bills as well. I'll put this up on the screen. On a fake check, it probably will actually just be an actual line. It won't be words, micro printed. If you think about it, it'd be much more expensive to have a printer that can print tiny little words like that instead of just a line. So that's why, that makes that a security feature. Look out for watermarks, just like on dollar bills. All U.S. Treasury checks are printed on watermark paper. The watermark reads U.S. Treasury and can be seen from both front and the back of the check when it's held up to a light. The watermark is light and cannot be reproduced by a copier. Any check not having the watermark should be suspected of being counterfeit, they say. Look for ultraviolet overprinting, they say. A protective ultraviolet pattern, invisible to the naked eye, consisting of 4 lines of FMS bracketed by the FMS seal on the left and the United States eagle on the right. This pattern can usually be found under the payee information and the dollar amount area. The FMS pattern and seals can be detected under a black light. If the amount box is shaved or altered in any way, a space will be created in the ultraviolet area. So that's one more thing to look out for. And also, this is another thing where it may actually say FMS, or it could even say fiscal service, fiscal service, fiscal service, depending on the actual paper stock that you receive, if it's new or old. So that's all the security features that they offer on these checks. Chances are, if it's a fake one, they didn't go above and beyond enough to cover all those. So if you have those, it's a pretty good chance that your check is legitimate and you can deposit it. So that's all I have for today. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.